did this work like the first time, like just smooth? Look at that. Tanya's in already. We were rocking and rolling today. Holy cow. I don't know if there's got to be a mistake. YouTube, I'm sure, is waiting to like backstab me the moment I try to do something. What's up? What's up? Have you been? Nice. Oh yeah. Well, just wait till he has to pay. Then he won't like it so much anymore. Yeah. Just a quick aside for everybody that's watching. If my eye like spazzes out on you, just understand that I don't know. I got some kind of like scratch on the cornea of my eye, so it is very discomfortable. I may like do one of those, but I'll try to like stay focused and watch the screen as much as I can, but um, do my best. Anyway, so um, today's episode is about bringing America back together again, right? Because we keep trying, and for some reason they're not listening to Common Mansplaining. I don't understand what's going on. Um, to that end, Bill Maher and President Trump got together at a dinner facilitated by Kid Rock. And hey, Tanya, how's it going? And to everybody else in the audience, so they got together for a dinner, and this represents, I think, what needs to happen for all of America to heal. Right, is for us to just start talking to each other again. Right, this is something where it shouldn't be that hard. We should all. I remember growing up back in the day when I was growing up, it was like you can have political debates, right? You could be at complete opposite ends of your discussion and argue with each other, but at the end of the day, it was like you'd still be friends. You'd still be able to eat with them at the cafeteria lunchroom. You'd still be able to talk with them in family dinners. It wasn't like one. Right. Yeah, it's like, I mean, and nowadays I feel like it's very much the opposite. But nowadays it's like I'll be on Tinder, like swiping, and like it like people profiles would be like if you voted for Trump, swipe left. Like we can't ever possibly see eye to eye if you voted for, or vice versa. Although it's much more common to see the left block out like entirely based on. Although I do see it on the right too. I do see it on both sides. But yeah, that's a. Oh, Christian, you can't see Christian? That's weird. All right, yeah, he'll be right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. That's so weird. I don't know why. Once again, I knew it. I knew YouTube was not going to let us make this work on the first shot. But anyway, guys, hold tight for a few seconds. Technical difficulties, and Christian should be back. I pray. And in any case, for those of you out there, the topic we're on, and we're talking about Bill Maher's dinner with Trump. Let us know what you think about that in the chat, and we'll get to you as soon as Christian gets back. We should have a lively show for you. But yeah, big thing though is I think that here we go. Let's see if we can get him back. Come on. Boom. Did that work? Do y'all see him now?
I'm here.
See. Yeah, right. My eye. Yeah, I can see you.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. All right. Woo, we got it. Awesome.
So
awesome.
yeah. Right. So yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, where sometimes it looks like it works on our end, but who knows about YouTube is its own sort of there. Now,
yeah, YouTube is funny. Yeah, go on.
Here's the point I kind of wanted to make. Like, so centrists also have gotten a bad rap as well, right?
Yes.
So now I think our general position is we try to be centrists who tend to be skeptical of the left, right, and a little more open to the right. Maybe me more so than you. And there's a whole bunch of centrists who are the flip of that. Bill Maher, we might say, is more friendly to the left, skeptical of the right, but tries to brand himself as a centrist. And we try to say that in our positions, after looking at what's been proposed, we try to find the common sense. A lot of people sort of downgrade that. It's people who take their time to make decisions about political decisions. People who aren't, you know, on out there protesting for every little thing. Look,
Right.
look at right. I mean, George Soros pays me enough. I'll get out there with the sign. I don't know if you've seen it. There's actually a fentanyl guy holding a sign against ICE and completely zoned out. It's like, so yeah, my protesting time is for sale, George Soros. I will stand in the street for enough money.
Yeah, or
But
Elon. Anybody that wants to pay me gobs of money, I'm happy.
Yes. By the way, we are for sale for that. But centrists kind of get a bad when we try to be a little bit more like, you know, or look at it and say, well, why are you so upset about that? Especially hot button issues, right? People like saying like, you know, here in North Carolina, they're angry about Roe versus Wade being overturned, and we say, well, but you have rights to abortion in North Carolina, so what's the problem?
Right.
And they're like, but it's
but
okay,
somebody in,
those people protest. I mean, why are you upset? Yeah, you literally had no impact. So we sort of want to see something that impacts us. But obviously, I think one of the things that we need to see beyond to come together is common humanity. And
yeah.
I think a lack of, right, this is going to sound very right-leaning sort of thing, but a lack of religiosity as our society become more secular in the 21st century. I think we're less likely to see that common humanity, and more likely to see, hey, you don't agree with my interests. I need to oppose you like an enemy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends. Obviously, depends. I mean, I've learned that atheistic belief is just as varied as like religious faith-based belief, and so you can find everything along the spectrum from like there are definitely religious people I know who are like with all due respect to terrible people, like, and then there are atheist people I know who are like just fabulous people, like literally would be saints if they cared to be, right, saints.
Yeah.
But there's like this kind of like secular humanism, which can be a very, very conjoining, can be a very like collaborative type of. I'm going to call it a faith because it is essentially, but whether you call it a faith or not isn't important. They're very, very in tune with like coming together and being humane and being, like together as humanity. But there's definitely people who are like on the other end of the spectrum who are like, well, will specifically avoid being humane because of its proximity to religion. And it's like, okay, wow, that's just silly. Like people like that are like, woohoo, I've killed 8 babies already. Ha ha. It's like, okay, come on now, really?
Yeah. That's obviously a reaction against it. So yeah, I know I'm barking up there on a tree who's saying we need to make our society more religious and we need to come back to God. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if we stay secular, if we're looking for a secular solution, like Tanya said, she's not religious and values humanity. How do we, how do we have that value? How do we spread that value in a secular way? Because rather religious way. Have people see, look, this person disagrees with how. Where here's the 3 precepts I'd say: how the government should be administered, what the line is for disqualifying corruption, right? Maybe their line is slightly different from that,
right?
Where social problems should be solved by the state or solved by the citizens in other ways, right?
Right.
And so those kind of lines are generally where people differ on the left and the right.
Absolutely. Well, and one thing to point out, and this is, and obviously, like it's like we said, we're not we try to be relatively centrist, but we do have a leaning, and that leaning is a conservative one. And I think part of the reason for that is because our American experiment itself is a conservative experiment to a degree. And I'll explain what I mean by that, right? Like it began with our Declaration of Independence, where they basically said it right there in black and white. We believe in unalienable rights endowed by our creator. And I mean, that sets a tone that even if you, and they were very free with religion, like very free with people like being what they want and having freedom of choice and stuff like that, very free with that.
Government does not grant you rights. God gives us rights.
Right. And see, that's a key difference though. And because of that tone, because of the way it starts, there's a certain gravitation toward that original ideal that I feel like we have to come together on. And I mean, I grant that there's going to be times where across the board in all walks of this kind of like collaboration, there's going to be times where the conservative position is going to have to give up more. There's going to be times where the liberal position is going to have to give up more. I think this perhaps is one of the cases where, in order to truly come together and be part of the American experiment, if that's the goal, that's one of the places where the liberal side is probably going to have to sacrifice a little bit more, just because they have to understand that this is the American experiment. It started at this one place where these rights are God granted, not government granted. And so that sets a completely different tone for the entire structure of government. Now, you could be looking for something else, and that's perfectly fine. But then understand that may not be, America may not be your game, right? Like America may not be the place for you. And it's nothing, I'm not saying like to get out or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is how America was structured. This is how America is. This may not be what you're looking for. And so, you may be fighting to change it. I'm going to be fighting to keep that America the same. And that's going to be a hard part to come together on. But there are also places where, like, I think there's plenty of places where conservatives can give ground. One of the big things, though, is I feel like that's what I'm trying to tell people is like, we need to be able to give ground. We need to be able to sacrifice. We need to be able to criticize ourselves, our own side, our own like tribe, our own group or whatever, because that's something that's really, really, really missing. But let's take a look at some of the things Tanya's already hard away at this. So let's take a look.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So Tanya says, so this is what I see. Both sides have the same shared traits: acceptance, values, goals, morals, forgiveness, jealousy, hatred, pride. It's just all humans. Doesn't matter the views. Boy, I wish that were true.
Yes, right.
I really wish that they were true. And I want to believe that that's true. I want to believe that's true. Unfortunately, that's very unlikely to be true. Boy, do I wish it were, and boy, do I want to work toward that. But right. I think there are many people who, for example, have different morals than I do. I think there are many people who have different goals than I do, different values than I do, different levels.
There are bad people out there, right?
Yeah. Now there are things that we do share on that list, I think, across the board. For example, like all of us have very humanizing traits, like things like, imperfection, things like, forgiveness, jealousy, hate. All those things are probably common to all human beings. But there are some things that are just not common to all human beings, unfortunately. And that's wherein lies this whole game, right? Where we have to try to find
forgiveness is not innate to all human beings. Forgiveness.
No, yeah, it definitely isn't. Especially in today's society, which is unfortunate. Like what we're just talking about, this is one of the hardest things to find. Is like Christian was just saying, like centrists get kind of like this negative. I can't tell you when I started this channel. I can't tell you how much flack this is before Christian was even on here. I can't tell you how much flack I got because for the people who are Trump supporters, I wasn't Trumpian enough, and for the people who were not Trump supporters, I didn't hate him enough. And so it was like, I was getting it from both sides. I was like, just neither side was happy with me because I was trying to say like, Trump, like people would say, what do you think about Trump? I'd be like, and that was just not acceptable to either side. Right. And so like, I got hammered. And so I wish that, that middle ground position was less like stigmatized against.
Well, all right. So it can be portrayed as being lukewarm, like you don't care about your country. Right, that's why you're in the middle. You're just whatever, or you're letting other people set it, or you're indecisive, or you're just you just want to pick the winner, right? Or you're not thoughtful, like it's just you don't care, right? So this is the sort of stereotypes that go with people that have a little more centrist viewpoint. So we're trying, and I think that's one of the goals is that the common man or center viewpoint, the common sense solution, can be something that can be arrived at through a lot of intellectual study and thought to say that, hey, this middle ground, a moderate position is actually the appropriate way to view this particular policy, um, and to not be knee-jerk, not to
Yeah.
instinctually react against something. And it's fair to be skeptical. See, why we're skeptical of liberal policies is they're generally new things that haven't been tried. And
Yep.
it's where and we're like, okay, well, when it comes to government administration, results matter. Maybe try this at a community level or a state level and let's see if it works. Does it really need to be rolled out to the federal government? Things like that. This is what we would
Yeah,
say is
absolutely.
sort of a centrist position, but other people think, criticize us for being a little too slow or wanting that, which we think, prove it to us if you want our support rather than just make an argument based on wouldn't it be wonderful if the world worked this way
Yeah,
or
please just
this could
wave
be
the
done.
magic wand. Well, and the other thing, yeah, so one thing I thought I was thinking about this the other day, actually, it's kind of interesting. One of the things I was thinking about is Ace Deucey. Do you ever play AC Deucey? I don't know if anybody out there in the audience has ever played AC Deucey. It's a game, it's a card game. Still silly card game, very easy, where you'll basically you'll guess whether or not you'll put a card out and you'll guess whether or not the next card is going to be closer to ace or closer to deuce. In other words, higher or lower than the card that was just recently placed, right? And so, hey, Tanya, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And so with respect, let's see, what did she say? Just so I can focus
She
in on
had
that right away. Yeah. So she hadn't come up with a new one. But yes, having the same moral, right. Yeah, we're not all gonna have the same morals, but we all will have a moral framework, at least of some sort.
but if we value that everybody's human life and human experience is worth having, right? We want to respect that. Then we'll respect their opinions. We'll care about what they have to say, and I think just their approach. I think sometimes, right, the liberals are right. The old term when I was growing up, they would call them bleeding heart liberals because their idea was that they were motivated by compassion. How can we solve this problem? And we have to do it so fast. The government has to step in and solve whatever social problem they're finding, right? And that was a reflection of their value of humanity, right? While other people they value humanity by giving them more freedom and not having the government force or compel or create new institutions for that.
Right.
The different policies can still come from the same value, or you can still have the same moral value that every human life is worth and worth supporting, but differ on the proper role of the government in achieving that
Right. And then
value, that moral. Yeah.
right, yeah, that is absolutely where the line is drawn. So so yeah, so I was talking about AC Deucey. So one of the things that happens a lot is in society, I think, is that like when you place a card out, like there's only 13 cards in a row, right, from
Okay.
ace to deuce. So it's very easy to know which way to go in that bet, right? So if somebody turns over a 3, you're like, well, the next card's probably going to be higher than a 3, right? If someone turns over a queen, you're like, it's probably going to be worse than a queen, right? And so it's a very easy game, although, of course, betting wise,
Yeah.
things get complicated. But when this happens in society, sometimes I'll see this situation where we've been working with a system that's worked very, very well for a long time. And this is why I end up floating toward conservatism. We'll have a situation where we're working with a queen, right? And we might venture out into the unknown, but the odds that we're going to get a king isn't very high, right? The odds that we're probably going to get jack or less with some brand new system is unfortunately much, much greater. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder, like, this is where the danger comes in with like just changing for the sake of change, right? If
Yeah.
you've got a great system that's worked for 5,000 years, you don't really have to go out and get a new one. Now, that isn't to say that we shouldn't try to improve. But when we do, we should do so very, very cautiously. We don't want to throw away that queen. We want to like put this into some little state like Rhode Island and see if it works while maintaining that queen, right? Like, and
Yeah.
then if it works in Rhode Island, maybe try it in like a tri-state area. You get what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
instead of immediately just like whoosh, let's try it. Let's throw the queen away and see if we can get a king on our first shot.
Well, it reminds me of it's sort of like you have an old cow and it becomes pregnant. And obviously this new cow is going to be better and stronger than the old cow. But if you shoot the cow while the baby's still in vitro, you're going to kill both, right? You
Yes.
have to give the old ideas, right, the proven ones, their space, and nurture, the new and better way. And I think a lot of it has to do too. People are skeptical of new ideas and skeptical of old ideas um, when they're presented in our two-party system, right?
Mhm.
In some ways, right, the left or the Democratic Party can be just as resistive to changing things that have been in their benefit for a long time, right? And
True. Very
so,
true.
so things that are politically entrenched and a certain policy can be adopted and be supported by one party and flip flop 20 years and it's supported by the opposite party. So that's when people start feeling okay, it's not the policies themselves that they disagree on, but the timing or what they feel like the political support of the political wins are. And
Who
I
gets
think that's
credit
part
for
of
it?
right. That's when people start becoming skeptical. It's like, is this really does it really matter? Um, you were for this before you were against it. You're against it before you were for it. Um,
Right.
is this really coming from a place of integrity? And
Right.
and I think that's one of the things too. If that could help us depolarize is seeing how and just lean into that and saying, all right, maybe this policy might be right at a different climate, right? If there
Fair
were
enough.
different
Or
factors
yeah.
and we're saying, and but it's not right now, or it is right now.
Right. Right.
But it's always cast as we're against whatever the other people are against, rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
evaluating something based on its merits and time.
Right. So let's see what Tony said. And let's see. These labels, the only reason we label is because it makes it easier for us to simplify complex systems. But if you can accept that people are complex and multifaceted, the separation might go away. It might. That is very true. One thing that I've noticed is that one of the troubles we're having right now is the way we label, right? Where there's this big fight over words, there's a big fight over like categories, for example, like man, woman, things like that, things that haven't had um, difficulties in labeling in the past, but now
Yes.
they're recently
Yeah.
having trouble. One communication is huge, right? Communication is huge. And one of the things that I really love about what Bill Maher and President Trump did is that even though they don't even really like each other, right? And there's plenty of evidence to support that they hate each other, right? Even though they don't really like each other, they were at least willing to listen to each other. And one of the problems that I see, and this is one
Uh-huh.
situation where I'll say conservatives have a huge issue, and like it's apparent with my parents, is there'll be these new labels, these new like categories that'll come out. And my parents are just so used to the old that they don't even think about the new, right? They just like the brain shuts down. And it's not that they can't think about it. My parents are very smart people. Even in their old age, they're very smart. They're used to something, and that's understandable, but they're perfectly willing, like capable of understanding the nuances that people are trying to bring to the table. They just don't wanna because they're like set in their ways. And that's
Yeah.
something where I think conservatives could do a much better job of just listening to the situation, and then we'd have a much better chance of like coming back to the table together because you can't really talk with somebody that hasn't even understood the problem, right? You can't really talk with somebody who they're just going to be set in their ways, and I wish that would. And there's plenty of that happening on both sides, but I just see that happening a lot in when there are new things that are introduced, new
Well,
ideas or new
well,
concepts. Yeah.
I want to go back when Bill Maher he talked about how impressed he was in this meeting, how Trump completely dropped his public persona. He
Yes.
laughed at himself when Bill Maher would say something. He's like, "Oh, that's true," and he just like changes. Bill Maher like changed his mind on things, and like when he was like, "Why no dog?" and he's like, "Well, people have dogs for political reasons." He's like, "Actually, just millions of people love dogs," and he's like,
He's like, oh
"Okay,"
yeah,
and and
that was funny.
so what he's had to see is yes, Trump has a political persona, and
Right.
he feels very when he's on, especially in front of the press,
Yeah.
he's on edge and he's feeling attacked and he's feeling defensive, and
Yeah.
he feels like the press are bullies, they're elites, and that's the people you pick on somebody your own size. Those are he can be mean to the press, right?
Yes.
And so, but Maher was like really impressed that on a personal level or private level, none of that was held onto. But his fastidiousness was his public posture. He doesn't appreciate the fastidiousness, but it helped him to know and appreciate Trump's humanity, and that Trump, that's a strategic or a reaction or something, a mode that Trump actually goes into to govern, and maybe it's a coping mechanism for
Yeah.
all that's being thrown at him, and
Yeah.
because they're definitely, the press want to make him look stupid and want to try to trip him up,
Of course.
and
And
he does not respect them for that.
yeah. And it's like you said, where the centrists get kind of a bad name, right? Trump really doesn't have the opportunity to be centrist in front of people, even though he is kind of a centrist. Like,
Yeah,
if you look at his policies, he's
long
very,
term,
like,
yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I've talked to liberals and they're like, they're trying to tell me how bad Trump is. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's not very conservative. That's why I don't understand why you don't like him, because a lot of his
yeah,
policies are very like liberal-ish.
yeah,
I'm like, what's the problem with it? We were talking about, damn, like, tariffs are kind of liberal-ish.
yeah. The
There's a lot.
unions love tariffs. Unions love tariffs, right? That's the base of
Yeah. And
the
but meanwhile, right, it's like Trump's in front of these people, and it's like, if he gives some ground, unfortunately, he doesn't get any credit for that. Like, he's only going to get hammered for it, unfortunately, in the press and stuff. But like, if he says something like, hey, I made a mistake earlier and I really shouldn't have, but I'm going to head in a new direction. To me, that would look like responsibility. To me, that would look like a leader taking, owning his spot and then moving in a good direction. But to the press, it would just be like, Trump admits horrendous failure, and da 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 da. The headlines would like
Well, yeah,
roll from like the.
and that's the loudest voices are getting all the views, right? They want the clicks. They want, and so as a centrist, or if you're ruling as a centrist, it's sort of, hey, let's say he's doing a new policy like tariffs. Let's give him some time and see what happens. Maybe there'll be some negotiation. This isn't going to be fixed one time. Maybe I have to take a harder line with China. Maybe we can come to some reasonable accommodation. But the people scream, "This is the end of the world. This is the end of the end of American economic hegemony." Da, 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 da. Those voices get the most attention, and so
Thank you so much,
centrists want to come down and just be like, "Hey, let's give this some time. Let's think about this. Let's slow down. Let's not overreact." But the overreaction points on both the left and the right, the very far progressive and the very far right wing, right, are screaming for action now, rather than a measured approach.
All right. So as Tanya says, adaptation versus fear of change. Unfortunately, both are natural to all humans in different areas of each individual. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that one of the we were talking, Tanya and I were talking about this the other day, that it's one of those things where when you're already in that fight or flight mode, like Trump gets in front of the press and he's already in fight or flight mode. I mean, he's got to have his shield up. He has to be unfortunately. Now, one thing I will say, and this is I think could be said of both sides too, could get more leeway, right, is something they call code switching, right? Like, it's one thing that people used to accuse Kamala Harris of a lot. Like, she would go to Detroit and she would pick up a Detroit accent or something. She's like, you better thank a union member for sick leave. You better, like, a lot of that, right? But you know what? But here we have an example of Trump doing something similar, where he's one person in private, another person in public. And that's just something I think that everybody does to a certain extent. Like, I don't think that that's something that we should really, like, people were talking about Jasmine Crockett doing it too, and touching up her accent. Sometimes it happens innately, right? Like, when I go to New York, I already have kind of like a northerner's accent to an extent. But when I go to New York, all of a sudden it's like, like all that junk will just come out. And I'm not trying to do it. It's just I'm around it, and that's where my father's.
They're politicians. You've got to get over that, especially if they're on TV, right? They've got to appeal to their voters. That's why people from North Carolina, Southern politicians, if you meet them quietly, they might talk, with no accent at all. But you get them with a microphone where they know they're on TV, and they'll be like, I have no,
Of course.
no, they sound like, Foghorn Leghorn. And because they know that there's a chance that's going to be clipped and shown in their home districts to their voters,
Right.
and for them, they know that that sells. So
Right.
I haven't been out there, lambasting Crockett or Kamala for their accents. They're a little silly, but they're not trying to appeal to me. I'm not their voters, right? Obviously, right, my issue would be with the policies that they're fighting for. But people become defensive. People react with fear, right? And I think that's part of the polarization is there's a fear, and one of the very, very real fears is loss of their political power, right? We talk about, right, Eddie and I, for those of you out here watching, we happen to vote in a swing state, so our vote matters, right? All the politicians come to Raleigh, North Carolina, right? We could probably go to see one of the presidential candidates every week in 2024. While my family lives in California, where I grew up, right? Their vote doesn't matter at all. Like, I don't even talk politics with them, because even if they want to vote Democrat, even if I changed every single one of their minds and they voted exactly the way I wanted to, it doesn't matter. That state's not a swing state. Their votes don't matter, and they know it.
Right.
So we have a chance of feeling like our voice, that we have political power, and people feel like if they have a loss of political power, they're really sensitive to that. Groups, especially minority groups, and that's why identity politics has become so powerful. They speak to the only way you're going to have power in this country is if you vote for people that share your identity. If you're Hispanic, you have to vote for somebody who's Hispanic. If you're African American, you have to vote for somebody. Nobody can do a good job or represent anything that's good for you unless they share these tribal identities with you.
Right.
That's something that I hope people are waking up to. That bubble is bursting, and that I think could bring us together. If we could see beyond identity politics, would be such a strength to bring people together, that they could and see, hey, is this policy something that I could give time to see if it works, even if it's being spoken by somebody, advocated by somebody who's not of my shared identity.
Right. So let's see. So Tanya says she brings up the Spider-Man quote: "With great power comes great responsibility." So that's actually originally credited to Voltaire.
Yeah.
But you guys probably know it from Spider-Man. One of the things to understand is that, and I think I've said this before on the channel, my position, and tell me what you guys think of it. Right. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. My position is that with great power comes great responsibility to manage your own power, not to manage others, right? I think that that's a common mistake, is for people to understand, like people think that because you are powerful, that you all of a sudden grow this obligation to somebody else. I think you grow it
if your
yourself.
power is as an elected leader, if you've been granted by people, right? You've been granted
That's different, right?
by the Republic power, right? Official power, right?
Right.
How do you use that? Do you use that in a way that benefits your tribe? Do you use that in a way that benefits your voters? Do you use that in a way that respects people's humanity? If you're in a way that is true to your convictions, your moral framework.
Right. I was going to get to that. Yeah. So yeah, right. And so if you're granted, especially if you're granted it by a group of people, like for example, the American public, right? Then your duty is to the people who have put you in that power, right? So like your duty is to them, and to them first. Now that doesn't mean that you neglect everybody else, and that also doesn't mean that you can't be charitable to people outside of those to whom you owe responsibility, yourself included, right? Even if you built your power yourself, all of it was you. That doesn't mean that you can't be charitable to others, but it does mean
him, right. That was Trump. He was listening to somebody who very much did not vote for him.
Yes, and that's so huge, right? Like that's how we come back together. Is we listen to each other. We because and Bill Maher, I don't think he went into this like, I don't know. It was difficult to understand, because he's a comedian. So some of the stuff he says is like with slapstick, So I couldn't tell, but I feel like he went into this with a little bit of like a bone to pick. Like I feel like he wanted to test Trump. Like because he went in with like a list of 60 things that Trump had said bad about him, like as like complaints that he wanted to hit him with. He wanted to check Trump on a lot of different issues, like the lawsuit that Trump has against him for calling his dad an orangutan or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, like there's a lot of silly stuff, but Bill Maher went in like trying to put Trump on the spot, like boom, 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 and Trump took it all in stride. I was impressed even that Trump was able to like be, to maintain his decorum throughout this whole thing for him to be polite the entire time. Because some of the stuff Bill Maher claimed he said, I would have been like, wait, what? Like I'd have had to punch back, but in a nice way, in a playful way. But I would have been like, I think Bill Maher, I think was one of the things he said about Trump is like, you're scaring your people. And some of this stuff, I'm like, was Trump scaring him, or was the media scaring him because of what Trump did and because of who he was?
Yeah, how they hype it, and they hype Trump's ego. Like the Trump wants to be respected. Everybody wants to be respected, right? That's why he said, like, what are you going to wear to the White House? He says, I don't know, but I'm not going to dress like Zelensky, right? A monochrome of sort of. This is common sense respect, paying people common sense respect, and giving them some time, being generous with your time, goes a long way. And even for people that don't support you, or didn't vote for you, aren't giving you money, right? We still want to, consider their things. Obviously, the people that give us money on the show, we give higher priority to, but we still want to listen to the ideas. And if you have opinions out there, let us know. What do you think about this idea? What's something that you've encountered that has made it hard for you to come to a consensus? It's made you, angry at the other side, and made it hard for you to feel like you can come together.
You're asking for it now. But yeah, I don't know if some of you guys may, if you're long-standing watchers of the channel, you go back a couple of years. I actually did a study once about the difference between the way that like right-leaning people debate and the way that left-leaning people debate. It was very interesting. It wasn't very formal, but I encourage you all to take a look at it because it was kind of interesting. One of the interesting results is that the left is much less likely to even engage in a debate. And one of the reasons for that is that the right is less likely to be kind during a debate, right? So like they get into a situation where like, and I mean, how can you blame them at that point, right? If like you're getting into a debate and the moment you get into a debate, someone's like cursing at you. Yeah, like screaming at you and cursing. It's like, well, of course you're not going to want to debate that. But to be fair, I think one of the things that's huge about bringing us back together is to be courteous and to treat everybody like an individual, including like Republicans and Democrats, because then you'll get into oh boy, Neil, give me a break, including Republicans and Democrats, because that way you'll never run into a situation where, you get mistreated by one Republican or one Democrat and then get into your mind that all of them are like that, because they're not. It's definitely not like that. Even if you notice a pattern.
People can be petty, right? And I understand that one Republican, or you have one bad experience and that taints you and makes you angry and you make ultimatums. I'll never support another Republican in my life or things like that.
Yeah.
Sorry. What is Tanya say?
She says if you have one has true respect, self-respect, that they tend to give respect. It only takes one to give respect. And that, yes, this is something I was going to talk about today actually too, is it's like the sacrifice game. There's always got to be that first person. I used to talk about this when I used to manage convenience stores. I used to be a manager for convenience stores and pawn shops for a long, long time. And, it'd be a situation where I'd be trying to encourage someone to like, so let's say somebody needs someone to take their shift on Saturday, right? And like nobody wants to do it, right? Because they're afraid that if they do it and then they don't get that favor returned to them, that it's like they're down a bean.
Yeah.
They're bean counting and they're down one, right?
Their strength and exploited it as a weakness.
Right, exactly. But I'm like, if someone is just the first one to take that step, then it starts that pay it forward cycle, right? And then the next person's willing to like do it back, and then then you've got a relationship. You'll do it anytime you guys need each other, and then it builds on each other, and it builds a great team. But you have to be that first person, right? If you can't find that first person, then the whole situation is difficult to manage because everybody's like looking at each other like around and and they're all nervous and they don't know what to do.
The first person has to be willing to be exploited and ostracized. That's kind of leadership. And it really takes one of the things I think a struggle for me, and I've talked about this many times on the show if you've been here, is that I think conservatives and myself come at ideas. There are two different parts of the brain, right? I've talked about this before. There's the cognitive, thinking, analytical, and then there's the limbic or emotional part of the brain. And I think, especially in debates, and you saw the Democratic Party make a lot of appeals that are very emotional, use emotional language, and their limbic part of the brain is what's leading them. And for me, my analytical part of the brain is very dismissive of that. I don't think that it's good. You've heard me probably disparage it. I need to probably improve where I respect that a little bit more and where I try to empathize. Okay, they're using this part of the brain. It's not how I would analyze a political issue or come to a decision, but let's try to value it. Let's try to respect it rather than being completely dismissive of it. And I try. That's a struggle for me because just when people come at issues from an emotional standpoint, I tend to sort of want to roll my eyes and not take them seriously. And while people who they might hear a very logical or analytical argument from us, but when it lacks an emotion or connection to humanity, they're dismissive of it. Right?
Yeah.
But what about this? So understanding that those are very different. People react to ideas in those different ways, emotional versus analytical. I'm trying to be respectful of those and rather than dismissive of it, even though my approach is not to be emotional.
Yeah, I guess that's huge. And you guys, I don't know if y'all are paying attention, but Christian, that's one of his, he just, committed to the traits that we're just talking about as being a very, very good thing to bring people back together. He committed, to self-embarrassment, right? And that's something that's very rare in this nation. We all need to do that kind of introspection to see what our weaknesses are. I'm a firm believer, no matter what people say, I'm a firm believer that both of the parties in America desperately need each other, believe it or not. I believe that both parties desperately need each other to have balance, because if either party goes off in their own direction and are unchecked, that it'll get to a point of idiocy. No matter how right they are to a point, if you cross that point, then it just starts getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's no matter which way you go. I think that no matter how analytical I tend to be, and I'm much like Christian in that regard, you have to have somebody there that's looking out for the little guy, or else that person gets left out. Because truth is, our country's been in this game for majority rule for a long time. It's been kind of we want to serve the most people as best we can, but that can lead to situations where the same one person gets left out over and over and over and over again because they're just not in any of the magical boxes that the majorities fit into. We have to at least have that person in the back of our mind so we can be okay, all right, this person's missed the last 28 laws, the last 38 government policies. Let's throw them a little bone here just so that they're keeping up with the Joneses and stuff like that.
Well, all right. So yeah, I agree with that. I kind of want to make a point. I was thinking when you were talking. Have you seen the movie World War Z?
Yeah,
anyone seen the movie World War Z out there?
Great movie.
So they talk about how in Israel, this is a real thing. So in Israel, right, when a ruling party takes over, they take over all of government, and so you can have a tendency to have everybody in the room having the same viewpoint. So they always want somebody there to give a contrary viewpoint.
Yes,
right?
Odd man.
What about this, right? And the value, that value, what you're talking about, right, of opposition, of contrary viewpoints, right? Obviously, they push you to improve, but that we can't hide ourselves in bubbles. And I feel like the left will do this a lot, hide themselves in bubbles and not want to hear contrary viewpoints, right?
Yeah.
Even if ultimately after they hear them and analyze them or feel them, they disagree with them, they would rather not hear them at all, right? And that I think we can't close ourselves off. We have to be open, right? You people have come, you've watched us. But the importance, right? They even talk about President Kennedy once had contrary or rivaling people on his cabinet so that he would get contrary and conflicting opinions. Right? He
Right.
didn't want groupthink, which is the term
Right.
when everybody starts coming to a consensus too easily. Right? Should we value contrary opinions and take a chance to think back and say, okay, and really give them rather than just, okay, that guy's just being contrary. He just wants to take an opposite position in this first. I think it's worth considering, and I think that could help bring us together too. If we value that we need a contrary opinion, and we need to
Yes.
consider that in every policy.
Yes, and yeah, and that goes for like not just the left too, because the right could use a healthy influx of left leaning. I can't tell you how many times like I've watched, for example, 3 or 4 like right leaning news channels, and I'll get a decent smattering of the news, but then the moment I go to the left, they immediately introduce a fact that was completely ignored by all of those right
A
leaning, and
blind
I'm like,
spot. A blind spot.
to me, it's crazy because to me, obviously, I'm not a news guy and I'm not a journalist, and I don't know all the ins and outs of like audience capture and how like ratings work and stuff like that. So I don't know how to run that business. I'm not judging them, but
Not news
that having been
director.
said, like if I were to do it, I would be like, if I'm creating an argument, I'd want to include all the facts that I can, and so that I have like the counterfacts to whatever I want to, like I wouldn't want to like leave this giant blind spot in there. And I can't tell you how many times I've like done that and like realized like, yeah, you've got to get a lot of times before I come on. I don't know if this is kind of, I'm telling on myself here, but like a lot of times before I come on here for the channel, because I'm very in tune with what the right thinks, and me and Christian talk a lot. I'll call up my left leaning buddies, just be like, hey, what do you think about this? Just so I get like all of the the good, because sometimes even watching left-leaning news channels I'll miss like a key talking point, right? Like or they'll have something new to introduce to it that was never part of my original consideration. And so it's good. We should all be doing this all the time, like all the time. And one of the big things that I think is like, it's like Christian, so we should never get ourselves backed into a corner where we feel like, one, we either can't talk to the other side, or two, that they don't have anything valuable to contribute, because they almost always do. They almost always do. Now, pulling it from them might be a different skill set, right? We may have to work on that, but because I've definitely spoken with people who have interesting facts that they could share with me, and then like it's like pulling teeth to try to get
Yeah.
them to bring it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's like, oh man, I can't tell you how many times that, oh, thank you so much, Tanya. Let's see what she says. Uh, it's been a while since her last comment, but yeah. What did Tiffany say? Tiffany said, everyone definitely has opinions. The trick is to be open-minded and to hear each other out and find middle. Yes. Amen to that. Like, can't tell you how big that is. And yeah, and Vicky says, express your opinions without belittling each other. Yes, that is huge too. I told is one thing I said, I actually told Vicky the other day, and it's a great piece of advice for anybody. And this is something that I had learned from my marriage, right? Failed marriage. So this is like word to the wise, right? Like, one of the best things that we can do for each other is to always perceive each other in the best possible light, right? Come to each other with a glass half full kind of attitude, because I cannot tell you how many times coming in with a bad attitude like tanks the thing from day one, right? Had Bill Maher gone to this meeting thinking, oh, Trump, there's no way that Trump could ever possibly recover his identity with me. There's no way we're ever going to see eye to eye. There's
Yeah,
no way we're going to.
topless, wearing just boxer shorts and just blatant, maybe slogans painted on his chest or something.
Right. Like there's so many times where I've gone into like, and I can't tell you how many times my ex-wife would like come in. I can't tell you how many times like come home from like a 15-hour workday where I've worked for the family, and I'll come home and I'll vacuum the floor and do the dishes, and instead of saying like, thank you for working 15 hours a day for the family, instead of saying thank you for vacuuming, thank you for doing the dishes, it's, you missed a dish right over there. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the kind of like perceiving in a negative light that like kills a relationship, kills a friendship, kills a interpersonal relationship, kills a political discussion. It kills everything. You need to come in with like, wow, thank you for this. I really appreciate that you did that. Great job. I see the good in what you're trying to do, even if I would have maybe done it a different way. Like you have to come in with that positive light.
Well, I think a lot of it, like journalists feel like the only way they can be respected is if they're seen as an attacking journalist, and so obviously Trump or anyone are on the fence are backed up by that. Now, but I was gonna say the one thing that we really talk about on this channel a lot, and that in spite of everything coming together, try to see through the spin. Both sides, when we talk about the right and the left, are going to try to spin things, right? Where he talked about how if he watches just right media, they will leave out certain facts, leave out certain arguments, and the left will do the same thing too. They won't talk about, they won't steel man their arguments. They'll put in their spin, and you got to be sensitive to that. We try to come here and try to open up, try to expose the spin, and try to say, look, the elites want to spread this narrative. And if we can see through that narrative and not be just taken in by the elites, that's where America, I think that can also bring us to the center, bring us to common sense, is not just be taken in, right? When you're watching something and say, they're spinning this because they want to spread a certain narrative. Why is that? Be skeptical of that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I would recommend that for like literally everything you see. Literally everything you see online, everything you see in the news. Because I mean, even something that you might think is like, even something you might think is like 100% stone, right? Like you might think it's like solid gold, take it to the bank. Like I'll give you a good example, like something like climate change, right? I think that climate change has a lot of truth to it, but if you're not at least asking yourself, why are they telling me these things? What do they want to, what kind of behavior do they want to encourage? And what good does it do? How does it help? Like, if you're not even at least questioning that, then you're not doing your job.
Yeah. Who are the interest groups, the lobbyists? What are the unseen things that are behind this? And that's what we'd like to come to here, right? And people come through is try to see through, try to expose, try to understand, and that the common sense will bring us is really where we want to be. The safe ground, and not being manipulated by narratives and by a selective review of the facts.
Yes. So along those lines, actually, believe it or not, I actually have a couple of. I'm gonna start the process here, right? I'm gonna start by saying some of the things that I think my side, quote unquote. I don't know that I even call Republicans my side anymore, but they're closest, right? They're closer to my side. Just they kind of got like this conservative muscle memory. One of the things that I'd like to see that my side get a little bit better at is following the Constitution, right? They're supposed to be the party of the Constitution, right? And Trump has come in like a whirlwind, and he's definitely putting us in situations that are like, like the 14th, the birthright citizenship thing. I'm like, ugh. That one rubbed me the wrong way, and he's got a couple of them, right? Him disappearing that dude down to El Salvador, who was ruled to not be supposed to be in El Salvador. The Supreme Court just came back and said 9-0, bring him back. Now, I don't understand why we didn't ask for him back in the first place. Like, maybe we can't do it easily. I don't know, but like, why wouldn't Trump just, call the dude up and say, hey, you do me a favor? And even if we end up deporting him to a different nation, like I just don't understand why we can't do the easy things to like give ground on our side so that we can get it on the other side. And
this is part of the thing. Admitting fault is one of those things that keeps us from coming to a consensus. Trump is right, very combative, very reluctant to admit fault because he knows his enemies will jump on it, right? Rather than be like, oh, he went too far. That there are a lot of names are common in Latin America. So you made a mistake. This guy had a name that showed up on a list or something like that. But really, he's a U.S. citizen. It's cool. Bring him back. No big deal. But everyone wants to make right. If he acknowledges he made any mistakes, that it's disqualifying, and the whole program of deporting dangerous illegals is wrong. And that's taking it too far. So that's a narrative. Yes, Trump is capable of mistakes. Let's see through. Let's not spin that. But those mistakes don't mean that a policy of deporting dangerous illegals is a bad policy and not
Right.
one that isn't right. So let's not be spun either way on this issue.
Right. So, hey, Tanya just brought up a huge point that I wanted to mention too. So it's interesting because she said that I have fooled her as a Republican, right? Because I am conservative. It's interesting to note this is another huge thing that we need to get better at. All sides need to get better at is to not assume groups that the other person is in. Right. This is a common one because I can't tell you how many times I'll say a simple thing like, oh, I'm pro-life, right? Just like one piece of information. This is all the person knows about me. And based on that one piece of information, they assume I'm conservative, I'm Republican, I'm pro-Trump, I'm da-da-da, I'm da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, most of that stuff is false. I just told you I'm pro-life. That's all. That's the only piece of information you've got to go on me. If you want to know if I'm in all of those other groups or have all of those other stances, just ask. Right, I'm here. It's easy to ask somebody, but we do this all the time, and I see both sides. Everybody does it, right? It'll be like we hear one left-leaning stance, and then all of a sudden the assumption is they're Democrat, they're liberal, they're atheist, they're da 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 da. And don't get me wrong, there are patterns. You can guess sometimes, maybe, but it's so much easier just to ask somebody instead of expecting that they fit into all these other nice little cookie cutter groups that it's so much easier. What does Tanya say? She says, it's because we label to simplify. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Absolutely. We label to simplify complex systems. It's always better to just ask questions. And, and if you're going to group, here's my rule, my huge rule. Again, if you're gonna label, if you're gonna put somebody in a group, if you're gonna paint them in a box, paint them in a positive box. The worst thing that you can do is assume the negatives, right? Like if you're going to assume things about somebody, don't start assuming worst things that you can. Like don't start assuming
positive stereotypes.
Positive stereotypes. I'm all down for positive stereotypes, honestly. Like if you don't know somebody and you want to assume that they're a loving person, go for it. But if you don't know them, don't assume they're a hateful person, right? If you don't know, this is what drives me nuts. Like people do this all the time. They don't know somebody. Like for example, Trump. They don't know Trump very well in the beginning, and then he'll make a comment. It's a little off color, right? And they'll like assume he's racist. I'm like, that's not the kind of thing that you can assume about somebody. That's the kind of thing that I wouldn't say about somebody unless I was 100.00% certain, right? Like I'm not going to do that unless I know. Right now, if you want to guess something positive, go for it. You can guess all day long.
All right. Like when I found out you're ethnically Italian, I would have guessed that you could sing and that you're a good cook and that you're a really stylish dresser. Hey, you're a great singer.
I got one of the
one out of three. Yeah, not bad. So, but it's not all positive things.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Like, yeah. If you want to guess that I can't jump because no, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there are lots of things that both sides could give ground on. One I would just love to see this. It's not going to happen. I'm a little bit optimistic, but one I would love to see is like if party A is in favor of a policy and then like they vote on it and then party B blocks that vote. Party B, don't come back and introduce the same daggone bill. If you were okay with it, then you should have just voted for it the first time. Like, don't do this like credit hogging thing where you're like, oh, we don't want them to vote it in. We want to vote it in on our turn. Oh my God, that drives me nuts. It drives me straight up nuts. Vicky says they're really good at being inside trade. They are. Did you? Yeah. I don't know if y'all hear. There's a guy that made an app that you can follow Nancy Pelosi's trades online. It's pretty funny. I should probably get on that thing, like, and become rich, and
once I have money to invest in the stock market.
Nancy Pelosi's she's averaging 30% year over year, 30% for lifetime. Do you know what that looks like? That means anybody would be a millionaire in like 20 years. That's insane.
Yeah, it's very good. I think that corruption is something that can bring us together, right?
Yeah.
That if everybody universally like said that we do not want to permit or accept corruption in our public officials. And obviously the line that we're going to make for that is going to be different. But that if in general we accept that no corruption is something that we must oppose, we must say that we will vote against anybody who's corrupt, things like that, and try to do whatever we can vocally and otherwise to come against the corruption on either side. Not a political issue, but that I think that can help us bring us to the center as well and not be as polarized. We can
Yes. Yeah, it's like simple stuff that like, like you guys have heard me talk about Doge. I'm in favor of Doge. I think it's a great program. Do I think implementation is going to be perfect? Of course. It's never going to be perfect. No one is ever going to be perfect. And for those of y'all out there who hate Elon Musk, understand that, based on the way the media works, based on the way nudge theory works, basically you are going to hate anybody in that spot. It's not about Elon, it's just about somebody helping Trump and the Republicans. That's all it is. Like, so whoever was in that spot. Okay. Took asks about in what arena. So Nancy Pelosi's averaged like 30% since she's been in.
And her stock market trading.
Yeah.
Year over year.
Since she's been in Congress, since she's been in positions of the no, she's basically earned 30% year over year in her stock exchange investments. So that's better than everybody that I know. I mean, it's better than every pro. That's better. Pros shoot for like 10 to 15%. Like my guy was the guy that I used for a time. He would like he was happy to get 10, and like if you got 15, he was like, man, you're doing good.
Yeah.
Like you're on
fire. Have to hedge. The pros have to hedge in case they're wrong.
Right. But not her.
Well,
we all miss the boat.
When you always pick winners, right?
We all
miss
the boat when
I'm very skeptical of Nancy Pelosi. She has been in a heavily Democrat. She represents a heavily Democratic district where she knows she doesn't face real opposition. There's no chance that nobody's going to vote for the Republican in any of her races. So she's allowed to get away with a level of shady dealings that would not be permitted in a tighter or more of a purple district. But we should still, even in heavily weighted areas, still say that that's not acceptable.
Right. And each party should at least to a certain extent should take care of their own, like should handle their own. Like it bothers me that like every time it's gotten so partisan that it's gotten to the point where like anybody on the left, is obviously corrupt, but the left will run interference for it. And the same thing goes on the right. Like anybody on the right's corrupt, but then the right will run interference for it. I'm like, come on, guys. And it shouldn't be like that.
Well,
it shouldn't be like
that Republican congressman did not last through his term. The real corrupt one. What was his name? The guy from Florida?
Santos.
Yes.
Yeah, Santos. Yeah. That guy was.
The Republicans weren't carrying water for that guy.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And guys, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a hot show. I'm going to keep running. For those of you guys who are out there, do me a favor, press that subscribe button real quick, hit the like button, press the super chat button. Wait, I'm kidding. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, everybody. This has been a hot show. And if you guys can think of other things that we can do to come together, put it in the comments, because I think that there's just so much. Like this kind of thing with Bill Maher and Trump should be happening across the board all the time. It's like it should be normal. It should be something that we do all the time. When I go home for the holidays, I should be able to talk with my left-leaning relatives, and it should be no big deal, right? And I can do so respectfully. So train yourself, guys. When you go home, train yourselves to say things in the nicest way, right? Train yourselves to say things in a tactful way so that you're not immediately triggering people, and find out what those sore spots are, because some people are going to have those what they call triggers or whatever. I've never used that word really before recently. It's been kind of a newer word for me in my vocabulary, but there are definitely people out there who are going to have, like, obviously they're going to have pressure points, right? Like, for example, if you're talking to somebody about abortion and they've had like 3 of them themselves, like maybe think about it a little bit, tiptoe around it a little bit, find the nicest ways to say it, or avoid the topic altogether, because that's going to be something that you really will stress your friendship, right? Stress your relationship.
Yes,
Yeah.
Tanya speaks the truth. Tanya speaks the truth. And please watch. We have a lot of great videos about this, long form videos. Watch all of them. Lots of them about tariffs, interesting, and about morals. Appreciate it, and just put them on in the background. You'll just get some of the
Yeah,
ideas through osmosis. It'll help you. And
yeah, guys,
but
for
yeah.
for real, like for real, guys, we have to get to 4,000 viewing hours to even like monetize. Other than these super chats, we're allowed to get super chats now, but we can get super chats and we can have memberships. So if you guys want to buy a membership, we are going to start having members only content. But like, if you the next level, we have to get to 4,000 viewing hours. I think we got like 1,000. Like as long as we've been going like almost a full year with Christian. Like with Christian on board, and that doesn't even count what I had before.
October. I came out in October.
Yeah, so like so we're like a good that's that half a year, almost 3/4 of a year, and like we're still like not even remotely close to 4,000 viewing hours. If you guys want to just put on our stuff and just like put it on the background, just run it all day long, that would help, or I don't know. I think these lives are going to help a lot. So now that we do show every Wednesday, every Saturday, I'm down to keep that going. It just real quick too, for everybody that's in the audience, is this the best day for our lives? Does anybody have a better day that would be what are the best days for us to do this live show? Because right now we're doing Wednesdays and Saturdays. I don't know if that's right. The reason we added Saturday was because I was getting told by a lot of people from our Wednesday show that they wanted a weekend thing. They wanted something on the weekend. But now I'm also told by some people that weekends are bad. I think it's going to be different for everybody. But yeah, if you guys have a day that works best for you, I got 67 people in chat, but nobody can tell me what day they want to have a live show. So yeah, rush it down. Wow. You out of here, Christian?
Yeah, I'm good. And but I'll if our members have something, do make comments on our videos. We respond to those. We're happy to continue the conversation. Watch our videos, make comments. We will respond. And always remember, don't be taken in by the elites. The common men have this figured out. You can be intellectual, you can be centrist, and you can be right. All right, keep it coming.
All right, Christian, take it easy, brother.
Good.
So I'm going to keep this going for a little while because we're pretty hot. I got like 71 people in chat, so I don't want to let them down. Yeah, I would, if boy, every day. I wouldn't mind having a show every day, but God, that's a lot of work. I don't know if you guys know how much goes into this. It is like a lot of work. Like right now, I'm probably putting in, I don't know, probably about 50 hours a week, and that's just for the 2 shows. That's just for 2 shows, and then like 2 shorts every day, and so forth and so on. But yeah, I'm going to keep plugging away. Something else I would love to see. Doge should get the support that anybody looking for corruption should get. I don't understand why it is such a hot button issue for the left to hate Doge. I don't understand why that's a thing. But if somebody out there is left leaning and doesn't like Doge, let me know exactly what the problem is, because I think there's a lot of misinformation going around about Elon Musk. I think there's a lot of hatred going around about Elon Musk. And this is a guy who essentially is doing this for free. He's helping out. He's not paid to do this. He's taking out his own time. He's going through considerable business loss to do this, in fact. And I don't see why that would be ever a bad thing. I mean, I think so. Let's see. Tanya said, I need to know what it is all about. So Doge is Department of Government Efficiency. That's what it stands for. Of course, part of the reason that it's Doge is because Elon Musk likes this old meme coin called Doge, and so he created a way to make it equal that or whatever. But anyway, but yeah, the concept is that President Trump wanted a department that audits every department, and looks at all of the things that they're spending money on to see if it's, on the up and up, to see if it's fraudulent or, just wasteful or abusive or corrupt in any way. And Elon Musk has found so much stuff already. He's found such an incredible treasure trove of the most unbelievably outrageous, corrupt stuff that, yeah, within the government, absolutely. Yeah, within the government. Like the most recent thing that he found was corruption in the SBA practice, the what does it stand for? Something, Security Business Administration practice or something. Anyway, they do loans, and basically Elon Musk found hundreds and thousands of loans that were being loaned out to like people that aren't even born yet, like kids that literally are not even born, people that have a birth date up to 15 years in the future. So yeah, so to answer Ethan Moore, yeah, he gutted government. So here's one of the things that it's one of the common misconceptions about Doge, right? Is that they say that Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency gutted government programs down to ineffectiveness. First of all, Doge doesn't actually do any gutting. They don't actually do any expenditure stoppage. What they do is they bring it to President Trump, or they bring it to the department head like Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, and they say, here's what we found. And then those people do the gutting. The next thing that you need to know is that very few of, if any of these places have been knocked down to ineffectiveness. There's going to be a spin, and this is what we were just talking about before. There's going to be a spin on both sides of the aisle, right? There's always going to be a spin. One of the things to understand about this is that there's going to be a negative pushback for every single thing that Trump does, every single thing that Elon Musk does. And so whenever this comes into play and they say, hey, look, we found some stuff, the left is going to be like, no, you didn't. It's a lie. And then after they prove it, they're going to be like, well, you shouldn't have found it. That was a good program. And then when they prove that it wasn't a good program or that it was corrupt or wasteful, then they're like, well, nah, it's just like maximum press, maximum pushback against anything Elon Musk finds. So like one of the classic examples is the National Parks Association, right? So like I think they fired roughly the equivalent of 2 people per park out of 500 parks across the nation, and everybody's acting like you can't run off of 2 fewer people. I was able to run a convenience store with a staff of like 10 off of 2 fewer people. I know parks with staffs of like 500 to 1,000 can run with 2 people short. They'll be just fine, right? This is the kind of thing that happens though, is the media spin gets in there, and then everybody thinks that this is only negative if they only look at the media from one side. But this should be, it's like you said, Tanya, how can they not see that this is good? This should just be like a pure good. It should just be like, wow, why would we not want to do this? Why? There's no reason to not do this. And not only that, you look back in history, Obama had a Department of Government Efficiency of sorts. Kennedy had one. Like you can go on and on, back and back and back. Many Democrats have done the same thing. Clinton essentially had something, although it was kind of, it's questionable whether or not it was all Clinton. It was kind of like Clinton and Newt Gingrich together doing their thing. But yeah, I mean, every single capable president has had at least someone trying to audit the government to make sure that they're not being wasteful. And let's see, Tanya says, this is what many Americans have been complaining about for a long time. Yeah, absolutely. It's not like, I mean, this should be a no-brainer, right? It should be like, like if you were to poll a million Americans and say, hey, question for you. Do you think that the government is spending your money as efficiently as possible? Like, I would bet you'd get close to a million no's, right? Like you'd get like almost 100% of the people in America would say we could do better, right? And what really drives me crazy is that we've had people in place, inspector generals that have been staffed specifically for the purposes of finding corruption like this, and yet for the longest time they either haven't found it, or if they found it, they did nothing about it, or if they did something about it, it was just so ineffective that like now Elon Musk is here and he's still finding hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that is fraudulent and abusive and stuff like that. And it's amazing. Like kids that aren't even born, people are collecting Social Security that long after they're dead. There are guys that like, so one guy was getting like 35 checks a month from one Social Security thing, getting, from multiple different states. It's like, it's outrageous stuff. And then some of the stuff that they cut were like, just activism. It was basically like people like, having a DEI play in Ireland or something like that, or a trans play in where was it, Peru, like stuff like that. It's like, well, okay, great, whatever. You're welcome to like do this kind of stuff on your own time, but with government money, this is outrageous. Justin Michael says, this is the first younger generation to have it worse than their parents since this country was founded. Yes, absolutely. That is true. This is the very first one. And you know what? And that goes for a lot of different metrics too, like the cost of living in comparison to wage, cost of education. I mean, the list goes on and on. But hey, listen, I don't know. We were rocking and rolling while Christian was here. I don't know what changed, but now we're down to like 20 people. So I'm going to call it a day. But guys, you were awesome. And just let me know if you guys have any topics that you want us to cover here on the show. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and we will catch you next time on Common Mansplaining. You guys are awesome.